everyone, my name is Chloe, and today I'm here to do my second half of March wrap-up. So I feel like March has been a really good reading month, and the true test is every morning I work out and I watch YouTube while I'm doing cardio. And if I am willing to listen to my audiobook over watching YouTube, that means it's a really good book. And I've had a few of those, quite a few this month, and definitely the second half of the month. So as always, I'm going to get into the stats, and then I'll talk about the books that I read with my kids, and then I'll talk about the books that I read for myself, and that's it. So in the second half of March, just with myself, I don't count any of the books I read with my kids as a part of the stats, but I read 12 books. That's 3,670 pages, which is 229 pages per day. My average page length is 306 pages per book, and so I'm reading about 3/4 of a book a day. I read 10 novels, 1 graphic novel, and 1 book in verse. 9 were adult, and 3 were middle grade. Because middle grade March is going on, I was kind of trying to read a few of those for myself. 3 were from my shelves. 9 were from somewhere else. So that is not how I want to do things, but I mean, so it goes. 9 were from Libby, 2 were from the library, and 1 was from NetGalley. So as always, like I will read books physically either off my shelf or from the library, but a lot of times if I can, I'll have a digital copy as well. So I count whatever the primary source is. I read 9 on audiobook, 2 paperbacks, and 1 ebook. I read 1 new release and 11 backlist. As far as genre goes, again, all over the board, 3 romance, 2 women's fiction, 2 contemporary, 1 dystopian, 1 historical, 1 nonfiction, 1 sci-fi fantasy, and 1 magical realism. So truthfully, all over the board. There are very few things that I don't read. Star ratings. I had 1 2-star, 2 2.5 stars, 2 3 stars, 2 3.5, 3 4 stars, and 2 4.5 stars. So no 5 stars, but for me, 5 stars are like all-time favorites. So it is very rare for me to have a 5-star. And the average then was 3.42. So the average feels like a little bit lower than normal, because 3.5 is like my threshold for where I would really recommend a book. At 3, it's like, if you're really interested, do it, but I wouldn't really recommend it. So it seems like I didn't have a great second half of the month, but it actually, like, on reminiscing, it felt good. So let's just talk about the ratings, and we'll see where we go. So these first couple I read with my kids. I read Room 1 by Andrew Clements, and it's Room 1's A Mystery or Two. This is about a kid in rural Nebraska, and he the premise kind of is that his school is about to close down because there's currently 9 kids, but 4 of them are about to graduate into high school, which is in a different town, and so there's only going to be 5 kids, and the schoolroom will not run with only 5 kids, and it's kind of known that if the school shuts down, the town is dust. So that's like the background context of what's going on, but that's not really what the book's about. The book is about this boy. He sees a girl in the window of an abandoned farmhouse, and so he goes and investigates because he loves mystery books and loves, like, he fancies himself a junior detective. So he goes, figures out what's going on with this girl, and tries to help her. And so there's a lot involved in that, and I loved this book because it was I think he's like 4th grade or 6th grade maybe, and it was him trying to do everything within his power to help these people, but also recognizing that he's not an adult, and sometimes he needs adult help, and doing the best thing for everybody regardless of if it's the best thing for him or not. And I loved it. I really, really enjoyed this book. Next is Mercy Watson Thinks Like a Pig by Kate DiCamillo. So this is like a 6-book series. It ties in with the Tales of Deckawoo Drive series. These are so cute. They're really quick reads. My daughter could easily read these herself. They're almost like, they're chapter books, but they're almost like picture books. But they're so good. We have not read them in any sort of order. You don't need to, but this is the last one we hadn't read, and just love it. Next is Skywatcher by Jada Jones. So Jada Jones is a series about a 4th grade girl who loves science. And if you've got a girl who loves science, or you want to get a girl interested in science, these are so great. She is obviously interested in space, and so everybody has to do a report on somebody famous, and she chooses Mae Jemison, which was the first Black woman in space. And she gets to meet Mae Jemison, and it's just really cool. You learn a lot about all of that, and also overcoming your fears. My love for this series is because these 4th graders are like the best kids ever. And so for that reason, I don't know if it's super realistic, but like, because they always do the right thing, even if it's super hard for them. And so I think it's a great series to read. Not 100% accurate, but like, this is kind of what I would like to read. And then last is Little Polar Bear Rescue, which is a part of this little animal rescue series, I'm guessing. But I did not like this because it like Goodreads, nowhere can I find like where the series is in order. And this one, I feel like we didn't know a lot. So this girl gets magically transported to the Arctic Circle, and she has to help this little polar bear find its mom. And like, we don't know anything about how she got transported, why, any of that, like how she knows about animals, why animals like flock to her. And it's like we are supposed to know, because obviously this happens to her a lot, but we don't know any details. And they're just like aimlessly roaming around, trying to find the mom. And so like, of course, they encounter other animals. Some are dangerous, some are not. They encounter weather issues. Some are dangerous, some are not. And like, yeah, they like take stuff off of like boats, like a survival, like it just made no sense. And they're very aimless. And I didn't like this. And if I could figure out what book 1 was, I might go back and read it, but I don't know. So those are the books I read with my kids. Now let's get into the 3 middle grade that I read for myself. So I read Alone by Megan E. Freeman. And this is the book told in verse. And so it looks really big, but it reads really quickly. This is about a girl who makes this plot, like she and her friends say they're all sleeping at each other's houses, and the plan is to actually sleep in her grandmother's vacation home, and her grandparents aren't there. And so something happens where her friends get sick, can't come, and so she's alone in her grandparents' vacation home, and she's like, all right, whatever. But then something happens, and the entire town is evacuated, and she's left alone. So she wakes up the next morning, and there's nobody there. It is a ghost town everywhere around her. And she has to survive years being the only person there. Now, I think the beginning was super intriguing. Like, it got me hooked. And then the pacing kind of gets weird because like years pass and it's like this terrible thing happened and then this terrible thing happened. And I get that like they don't want to just drag us through the day-to-day life, but it kind of felt like a little over the top with bad things. And the end was very, very rushed. And I wanted more of why everyone was evacuated. We get literally 3 lines that tell us why. And we don't know anything about it. And so I wanted a little more world building, a little more explanation, but I gave this 4 stars. I still really enjoyed it. So I would recommend just knowing you're not going to get a lot of detail. Then I read Katie the Catsitter. This is not a great cover at all, but Katie the Catsitter is the beginning in a graphic novel series about this girl who loves superheroes and stuff, and she gets this job. She's trying to go to summer camp with her friends, so she's raised by a single mom. They don't have enough money. She's trying to raise money or earn money, and she ends up watching these cats. There's like 297 or something cats that her neighbor has, and these cats are like uber intelligent, get into all this trouble. There's like superhero stuff going around. I didn't like this because, again, I felt like the world building was really weak, and I didn't know like what are superheroes, what are real world or like regular people, how do they interact, why do they interact. Like, I don't feel like we got any of that. So the world was weird, and like I didn't understand what she could and couldn't do. Also, she is babysitting these cats from like 6 p.m. to midnight every single night, and she's like maybe in 4th grade. And so I'm like, I don't, do people do that? I don't know. So overall, I didn't really like this, but I pre-read this for my daughter because she's really been wanting graphic novels, and I think it was perfectly appropriate and fine for her. And so I might read the second one just because it ends a little more clear than the journey, and so I might see if the second one's any better, but we'll see. Next is Fish in a Tree by Lynda Mullaly Hunt. This one is so good. This one is about a girl who struggles with dyslexia, and she is just having difficulties in school because she doesn't want to, like, her teacher gets really frustrated with her, and I can totally see both sides of this. Like, as a teacher, I mean, they are so overwhelmed, so overworked, and it seems like from the outside that this girl is just really sloppy, really messy, doesn't care, is kind of rebellious. You know, it seems like all of that's what's going on. So the teacher gets frustrated, and it's like, you can do better. Stop being so sloppy. Stop this. Stop that. Stop this. And the truth is she can't read, and she can't understand what she's supposed to do. And so she kind of like puts on this guise of just kind of having this hardened attitude because she doesn't want to seem stupid. She doesn't want to admit that she isn't able to read, doesn't know what's going on because she's afraid of being criticized. And this is the case for so many children. In this case, this girl has dyslexia, but I think this could be said for any child with learning disabilities. It's so hard to communicate without facing peer discrimination, facing hardships from your teachers, getting the support you need. It's just so hard. I see both sides of it. And then her teacher has a baby, and so another guy comes in to take over the class, and he recognizes it in her, and he is just a light for her and gets her what she needs and spends extra time with her, and is just a godsend for her. And I just think this was so powerful for any child that has learning difficulties and feels different. I think it was so good. So I really like that. And the whole premise behind Fish in a Tree is like, it's all about perspective. If you told a fish to climb a tree, you would think fish are really stupid and worthless because they can't do it. But it's just like telling her to read these things, like everybody thinks she's really stupid because she can't do it. Well, it's asking something that she's not, she's not made to do yet. And so, it's just about perspective and noticing your strengths and getting support where you need it. And it's so good. So that's the middle grade that I read. Now, I'm going to have to pull up my list over here of the adult books I read because I don't have all of them. But the first one is Whispers of You by Catherine Cowles. So I read this one as a recommendation for my Patreon. So I let everybody in Patreon pick one book for me to read, and this was one from there. So I won't go into too much detail here because I did vlog it all over on Patreon. But I gave it 4 stars. It's a romantic suspense, which is a genre I don't really like because I feel like either the romance is done well or the suspense is done well, but not both. And this one, I feel like it was the first one that I like genuinely enjoyed both parts, and I felt they were evenly balanced. It's about a girl who undergoes a really traumatic situation when she's young, and her boyfriend is not there, and he harbors a lot of guilt for that. The two separate for 10 years, and then he comes back, and the danger's not quite gone yet, especially now with him being back in town. So it's their romance as well as the situation going on. So I really enjoyed it and gave it 4 stars. Next, we have The Shore by Katie Runde. So this is about a woman and 2 daughters, I think, and the father has been diagnosed with dementia and or a brain tumor, actually. And so his mind, his attitude, his everything is really diminishing, and it's all of them navigating his downslide. He's unable to regulate what he says. He's mean at times. He's immature at times. All of those things as the tumor takes over his brain. This is definitely really heavy, and yet it's about the women and their coping. I gave it 3 stars. It's not one that I would really recommend necessarily, but if it's interesting to you, maybe try it. Next is, we have Meet Me in the Margins by Melissa Ferguson. So again, this is another Patreon recommends. This is a romance about a woman who works for an editing company and or a publishing house or whatever, and she edits, and she's trying to write her own novel, and she's leaving her novel, like her manuscript, in the ARC room, and somebody starts leaving notes. So it's a little bit of that You Got Mail trope of people, they're communicating, and one knows who it is, the other one doesn't. However, that part didn't really work for me, even though I love that trope, because it was so obvious who it was, and she was kind of like, come on, sister, like, figure it out. So that part was a little silly, but overall, I really enjoyed this book and gave it 3.5 stars. Next is The Alchemist by Paul Coelho, which was another Patreon recommends, and this one I did not like. This is a fantastical, allegorical, hypothetical, symbolic book about finding your purpose in life, and it's told from this young boy who goes on a journey to find his life's purpose, basically. But it was just too symbolic, too new age. Paul Coelho, I think, is a Christian, but very new age Christian. And so there's some Christian ties, but it was just much more new agey. Next, we have The Second Chance Year by Melissa Wiesner, and I love this. I gave it 4.5 stars. I knew I would because this is about a woman who she's living on her brother's best friend's couch or like in a spare room or something because she's lost her job, she's lost her boyfriend. Everything is just hard for her. She's really struggling, and so she goes. Her friend drags her to this New Year's Eve party, and there's a fortune teller there, and she says, "Can you let me redo this past year?" So she wakes up the next morning. She's back in bed with her boyfriend. Her job's back, all of that kind of stuff. And she decides to live this year differently. So the first time, she is naturally a very loud, opinionated, takes no junk kind of person. And it's that abrasiveness. I'm saying abrasiveness because that's a word that's used to describe her in the book. That abrasiveness is what she's saying made her lose her job and her boyfriend. So she decides to cool it down, not say things unless she absolutely has to, and basically please people this second chance around so she can keep her job and her boyfriend. And so it's a look at what would happen if you could do things differently? What would happen? And the friendship she has with the brother's best friend is really sweet, and I really like that. And seeing how that plays out the second time when she doesn't have such a hard time is interesting. This is definitely really good, kind of on the Me Too movement and just about sexual harassment and saying something, regardless of what you think the response will be, saying something. And I love that. And I love like just the character growth, and it was so good. I love this like road not traveled. I love that trope so darn much. And all of the books seem to have the same message about like being content and grateful for what you got. And that, it always seems like there's more and better, but is there really? I don't know. I give this 4.5 stars. I really enjoyed it. Let's see. Next is this one I actually still have. How to Talk So Your Kids Will Listen, and Listen So Your Kids Will Talk. This is a book from, I think, the 70s, maybe 1980, about how we speak to our kids and how we listen to our kids and how we treat our kids. And now this book actually made me laugh multiple times because for the time it is written, I think this could have been like revolutionary. And I think it was because they've made a 20th anniversary, a 30th anniversary. Like this is very popular, well-read, all that kind of stuff. And I think for the time, it definitely would have been. Now, in the age of parenting, where there's gentle parenting and like there's a lot of emphasis on that. And I think a lot of this was like, it was comical to me because the way it says not to talk to your kids and stuff, like totally my parents did. And like, because they didn't, it was a different time. It wasn't this push on gentle parenting that we have now. And nowadays it's like, of course you don't do that and this and that and the other. And so, I think I didn't really get anything out of it except just a reminder to always think like, when I'm talking to my kids, when I'm disciplining my kids, when I'm anything like that, how would I want to be treated? And how can I always treat them lovingly, even when I'm frustrated and even when all the things are really hard for me as their mother? Like, how can I still remember to put myself in their shoes and think, how do I want to be spoken to, even when things need to be correcting? Thinking about how I want to be spoken to and speaking to my kids that way. So, I think it, like I said, great for parents who maybe aren't very into the gentle parenting movement or don't know a whole lot or just have a hard time talking to their kids. But I think for me, it was just okay. Next is 5 Years From Now by Paige Toon. I don't know where I got this recommendation. It was somewhere here on YouTube. It wasn't like a Patreon recommendation. It was somebody talked about it, and I thought, I really want to read that book. I don't have it. I could only get it digitally. This book, I like Paige Toon. She is I think she's European or like British, chick lit, romance, women's fiction, all of the above kind of writer. And I really like her books. Her covers are always super cute. And this one, I didn't like at all. I gave it 2.5 stars. So the things I did like, let's start with the positive. I liked the writing style. It kept me engaged. It kept me turning the pages. It was the same Paige Toon kind of conversational. I really enjoy her writing style. But the premise of this book is about a girl who is raised by her single father. He gets married again to this woman who has a son who is the same age as she is. And so they are kind of worst enemies turned best friends. They're raised together from the time they're like 5 until they're like 10. And then his mother dies. And so leaves her dad a widow, and he has to go live. I don't think they ever actually got married. I don't know. Maybe they did. I don't think they did, because he has to go live with his father in Australia. So this book takes place in Cornwall. This boy has to go live with his father in Australia. And so they stay in touch. He comes back when he's 15 years old. And so they're both 15. And all of a sudden, there's this attraction between them. And so the rest of the book is basically their romance and them trying to be together despite life keeping them apart, because he lives in Australia, she lives in Cornwall. Obviously, her dad doesn't really approve. There's a lot going on. And so I get they were only siblings for 5 years, I guess, but they continued to keep in touch as siblings, and it just peeved me out. I was not on board for this relationship at all. And her dad thought of him as a son, and I don't know. And the main male character, I can't even remember his name, but the whole reason their attraction started is because of his jealousy, because he wanted to be her first everything, her first kiss, her first everything, and his possessive jealousy. And that happened multiple times throughout the book. Even when they were kids, another little boy was there visiting or something, and he was really mean to him because he was jealous of the attention. And it happened in their 20s. It just, ew, I didn't like him. And I couldn't get behind it's a sibling relationship. I don't know. And so, it was fine. I like the way it ended up. But again, I felt like our main female character had no backbone. This other guy made the decisions for her, and she had to learn to be content with it. And that happened throughout the story. So I really I like the writing style, and that's about it for that book. So definitely don't recommend. If it was you that were talking about it and you loved it, I really am sorry, because it was somebody on YouTube that I watched that loved it and made me want to read it, and it just wasn't for me. Then the last one is The Trail of Lost Hearts by Tracey Garvis Graves. I think Tracey Garvis Graves is one of the most underrated authors in the world. She is amazing. I love everything she's written, and this one was no different. So this is about a girl who I'm going to be kind of vague about things. Her boyfriend, or her fiance, dies, and she is just her world is in a tailspin. And so she decides to drop everything. She does some sort of social media stuff for her work, so she's able to work anywhere. So she goes to Oregon to start geocaching. And I know nothing about geocaching, so I was a little nervous about if I would like this or not. But basically, she's out hiking and looking for different things, different caches, and she meets this guy she is in this dangerous encounter with some other guys, and this guy steps in to help her, and the two decide to do this geocaching journey together because it's just safer and better. They're both really lost hearts. Like I said, her fiance has just died. He's going through some stuff that you find out later in the book. So they're both really lost, and they're both kind of escaping their lives by doing this whole week of geocaching in all over Oregon. And so they team up and do it together. And she, of course, is very hardened because she finds out some things about her fiance after his death. And so she's very anti-men, very hardened, very also grief-stricken as well as angry, and a lot of things going on. And so she, you see her walls come down, and they become friends. And there are maybe one or two steamy scenes in this book. One it's somewhat open door, and one is completely closed door. And so I felt like it was a fine amount, and it was very far into the book, so I thought it was okay. But this is, their romance. And then that part, the whole geocaching thing, is not the entire book. They separate and each go back to their respective homes, and it's their lives for a while after that, and how they interweave and how they don't. And I loved it. There's another trope in this that I'm not going to talk about because I don't want it to be spoilery, but it's a trope that I love. And overall, I really enjoyed this book. This is another one that had me, like, for 2 days, I listened to it on audio instead of watching YouTube. So I'm even more behind in YouTube videos, but I really enjoyed it and also gave it 4.5 stars. There's a couple things about the ending that I didn't love and I felt like were overly cheesy and unrealistic. But overall, like, it was a great book. And I've yet to read a Tracey Garvis Graves that I don't enjoy, so surprised that I like this one. But that's everything that I read in the second half of March. Have you read any of these books? Are you looking forward to any of them now that I've talked about them? What was the best thing you read in March? Let me know, and thank you so much. We'll see you in the next one.